What impacts does Brexit have to this day? Watch till the end to find out, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy. 4 years ago, the British public headed out to vote for their futures. Boris Johnson had promised Brexit to the masses, a promise of an exciting uncharted future. It was supposed to be the next step on the UK's road to glory. 4 years later, a report from the London Mayor's office shows that Britain would have had 2 million more jobs, 290,000 of them being in London. This has also attributed to low growth, which has led to a higher cost of living. With inflation, migration, and a million other problems brewing, the average Brit is now £2,000 worse off thanks to the deal. Asking where did it all go wrong would be too cheeky. So, let's see how it all went wrong. A new poll has shown that 60% of the British population feels bad for having voted for Brexit. It's a gain of almost 8% since the referendum was decided by 52% people voting in favor of leaving the EU. On first sight, it might not seem much, but on a national scale, these metrics are quite telling. Let's start with the economy, but let us preface by acknowledging that COVID-19 sent global economy for a swing, and Britain was no exception. Then, the Russia-Ukraine war caused further problems for all of Europe, while the economic slowdown in the UK cannot be attributed solely to Brexit. A few key indicators show its massive impact. The first issue the country has faced in the post-Brexit era is the increase in trade barriers. Businesses and organizations are having more trouble than ever getting their goods across EU-UK borders. The unending red tape of documentation issues is handing a big blow to the UK, and this issue snowballs into other issues. If goods are withheld, then warehousing and delivery costs increase as well. It does not come as a surprise then that several companies are moving out of Britain and settling into neighboring EU countries. When Brexit was heating up in 2019, business began cutting their losses, with reports suggesting that more than 270 companies relocated their key sectors because of Brexit. To solve this issue, the two bodies came up with the UK-EU Trade and Cooperation Agreement, or TCA. Despite Britain's best attempts at a seamless transition, the years since have witnessed a decline in trade, including a reduction in productivity as well as investment. The Office for Budget Responsibility has predicted that this trend would continue in the long term, with nearly a 15% trade reduction. While it may be easy to shift the blame on the pandemic's disruption of global supply chains, one key statistic is very telling. UK trade at the end of 2023 was 10% below 2019 levels, whereas the other G7 countries experienced a rise of nearly 5%. And all of this was expected too. Since this idea was first floated to the British public, economists have claimed that leaving the EU would have adverse long- and short-term effects on the British economy. In a 2016 survey, an overwhelming majority of economists, 88%, agreed that Brexit would reduce the UK's real per capita income. By and large, economists have expressed this sentiment over the years, insisting that countries' per capita income would suffer a loss of anywhere between 1 to 10%. When the deal was finally done in 2021, the Office for Budget Responsibility reiterated this idea, asserting that the 4% GDP loss thanks to Brexit would far outweigh the 2% GDP loss incurred due to the pandemic. Newer reports have shown that the UK would continue to lose out 4% of its GDP per annum over the long term. NESR reported in 2023 that the figure would be higher, with the country losing 5 to 6% of its GDP and £3,000 per capita by 2035. Fast forward to the London Mayor's report, and London's economy has shrunk by £30 billion. The average Londoner was £3,400 worse off last year. The same report shows how the economy is now £140 billion smaller. The report also states that if no action is taken to rectify these actions by 2035, more than £300 billion will be wiped off the UK economy. While the government was adamant on taking back control of their borders, reports show that immigration to the UK is now at an all-time high. The net rate of entries was 682,000 between June 2022 and June 2023, twice as high as before Brexit. Most of this is non-EU immigration, with Indians, Nigerians, and Chinese being the biggest contributors. This has increased worker influx into sectors like and healthcare. That seems like a good thing, right? But wait, there's more. On the other hand, EU immigration into the UK has decreased due to the increased amount of paperwork required, and more Brits are now leaving for EU countries than the other way around. This has created a significant labor shortage in certain sectors. The labor market in construction and agriculture keeps shrinking. A big portion of the workforce in these sectors came from fellow EU countries. With more restrictions, those workers are not able to make their way across the border to provide services in those industries. As we mentioned earlier, a loss of 300,000 jobs across Britain. What does that entail? A lack of workforce means an increase in demand and similarly an increase in wages for those services and products. This leads to those products and services costing far more than they would have with said EU workers. Similarly, the amount of foreign EU students coming into the country has decreased, and the country has seen a decline in its tourism industry. Britain's problems have only increased in the last 4 years. Even on the political front, Boris Johnson resigned thanks to a few scandals. Then, Liz Truss tried but failed to meet the challenge. And now Rishi Sunak is further tarnishing the Conservative or Tory reputation in Britain. The key issues like illegal migration, Northern Ireland dispute, economic slowdown, and a lack of responsible leadership all continue to plague the United Kingdom. With a new election approaching, the battle lines are drawn, and you can bet that we'd be hearing the word Brexit a lot more over the coming weeks. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that funky like button. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel to keep us company in the future.